He killed dozens despite witnesses naming him. Why did police dismiss every warning? The killer looked like someone you trusted.
The sun glared off the water at Lake Sammamish State Park. It was July 14, 1974. The sprawling grass was packed with thousands of people. Radios played from picnic blankets. The atmosphere was loud, safe, and completely normal for a hot summer day. Walking among the crowd was a young, handsome man in a crisp white t-shirt and tennis shorts. His arm was strapped in a white canvas sling. He seemed to be struggling to carry a stack of books toward the gravel parking lot, where a tan Volkswagen Bug was waiting. He politely asked a young woman for help. She agreed, and they walked toward the cars.
Wait, thousands of people are around them. This is not an isolated alley at midnight. This is broad daylight in the middle of a massive summer crowd.
Exactly, and that is the terrifying contradiction at the heart of this case. The man in the sling did not look like a threat. He looked like an educated, well-spoken college student who just needed a hand. Two different women walked away with him that day, disappearing into the parking lot under the bright summer sun. Neither of them was ever seen alive again. The man who took them was hiding in plain sight, using trust, vulnerability, and charm as weapons. And the investigation into who he was would expose massive flaws in the legal system.
If he could do that in the middle of a crowded park, the level of confidence he had must have been chilling. Who were the victims before they met him?
To understand the victims, you have to understand the environment of the Pacific Northwest in the early 1970s. This was an era defined by a deep sense of community trust. College campuses felt insulated from violent crime. Hitchhiking was considered a normal, thrifty way for students to travel. Young women walked home alone from the library without a second thought. One of those women was Lynda and Healy. She was 21 years old, a psychology major at the University of Washington. She broadcasted ski reports on a local radio station. She was responsible, deeply loved by her family, and known for her reliable daily routine.
It sounds like an environment where people did not even know they needed to be looking over their shoulders.
They had no reason to. But on the morning of February 1st, 1974, Lynda did not show up for her radio shift. Her roommates found her bed neatly made, but her sheets and nightgown were missing. There were faint stains on her mattress. The back door of the house was unlocked. Lynda was simply gone. Her disappearance was the beginning of a phantom epidemic. Over the next 6 months, female college students began vanishing across Washington and Oregon. Donna Manson, Susan Rancourt, Roberta Parks, Brenda Ball, Georgian Hawkins, all of them young, bright, independent women whose futures were suddenly erased.
But with that many disappearances in a 6-month window, police must have realized they were looking for the same person. Were there any connections between the victims at all?
The connections were incredibly subtle at first. They were all young, attractive, usually with long, dark hair parted in the middle. They vanished in the evening or at night, and almost all of them disappeared from environments that felt completely safe. College walkways, well-lit streets, or quiet residential neighborhoods. The families of these women were left in an agonizing limbo. They held press conferences, distributed thousands of flyers, and waited by the phone for ransom demands that never came. The terror in Seattle was paralyzing. No one knew what the threat looked like. The first real break happened after the disappearances at Lake Sammamish.
Because he finally let witnesses see him interacting with the victims?
Yes. Witnesses from the beach remembered a man calling himself Ted. They remembered his arm in a sling, his request for help loading a sailboat, and the tan Volkswagen Bug. Police released a composite sketch. The public submitted thousands of tips. Among them were calls from a woman named Meg Anders, a university psychology professor, and a local police officer. They all suggested a charming, politically active law student named Theodore Robert Bundy.
Did investigators actually follow up on those specific tips? Or did he slip through the cracks because he did not fit the profile of a killer?
He slipped through. Bundy was a psychology graduate, a former suicide hotline volunteer, and an assistant to the state Republican Party. He wore tailored suits. He was articulate. Investigators simply could not reconcile his polished resume with the brutal, calculated nature of the crimes. So while police in Washington were drowning in tips, Bundy moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, to attend law school, and the disappearances started happening there.
So he relocates. And he immediately starts the same cycle in a new jurisdiction where the police are not actively looking for his face?
Yes, but in Utah, his control began to slip. On November 8, 1974, a young woman named Carol DeRanch was at a mall near Salt Lake City. A man approached her, claiming to be a police officer named Officer Roseland. He told her someone had tried to break into her car and asked her to come with him to the station to file a report. He led her to a tan Volkswagen Bug. Once she was inside, he suddenly snapped a pair of handcuffs onto her wrist.
Oh, God. Did she realize what was happening immediately?
She did. She fought with everything she had. She managed to open the door, throw herself out of the moving car, and flag down help. Carol survived, and she gave police a critical piece of the puzzle: a description of the man, the car, and the handcuffs. 9 months later, on August 16, 1975, a Utah Highway Patrol sergeant named Bob Hayward noticed a tan Volkswagen Bug cruising slowly through a residential neighborhood in the middle of the night. When Hayward turned on his headlights, the Volkswagen sped off, blowing through stop signs. Hayward pulled the car over. Inside was Ted Bundy.
This is the moment. He is caught in the exact car that matches the Lake Sammamish witnesses and the Carol DeRanch kidnapping. How did he explain himself out of that?
This is where his psychological manipulation was fully on display. Sergeant Hayward looked in the car and found a canvas bag containing a crowbar, a ski mask, rope, handcuffs, wire, and pantyhose. Under the pressure of a midnight traffic stop, most suspects would panic or confess. Bundy did not. He leaned into his law student persona. He was calm, articulate, and completely polite. He claimed the ski mask was for skiing. He said he found the handcuffs in a dumpster. He told the sergeant he was just out driving to clear his head after studying. He built a wall of confident, plausible deniability, acting as if the police were making an absurd mistake by questioning a professional like him.
Wait, so he is sitting there with what is obviously a murder kit, and he just tries to talk his way out of it by sounding offended and professional?
Exactly. He used his class privilege and his education as a shield. He knew that if he did not act like a criminal, police might hesitate to treat him like one. He never broke character. He spoke to the officer not as a suspect but as a peer in the legal system. But Hayward was an experienced officer. The polite demeanor did not erase the physical evidence in the car. Bundy was arrested for evading police, which finally opened the door to search warrants and suspect lineups. But even then, the legal system struggled to hold him.
If they have the car, the handcuffs, and the survivor, how does he not go straight to prison for the rest of his life?
He was convicted of the kidnapping of Carol DeRanch, but police across Utah, Colorado, and Washington were building larger murder cases against him. In 1977, he was extradited to Colorado to stand trial for the murder of Karen Campbell. Because he was a law student, he elected to serve as his own attorney. This gave him access to the courthouse library. And in June 1977, he simply jumped out of a second-story window at the courthouse and walked away.
How does a suspected serial killer just jump out of a window during a recess? Were there no guards actively watching him?
He was technically acting as an officer of the court, so his physical restraints had been removed to allow him to review documents. It was a massive security failure. He was captured 6 days later, but incredibly, 7 months after that, he escaped again. He squeezed through a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell in Colorado, dropped into a chief jailer's apartment, put on civilian clothes, and walked out the front door into the snowy night.
That is unbelievable. He is facing a murder trial, he has already escaped once, and they still let him find a structural weakness in the ceiling? Where did he go?
He made his way to Tallahassee, Florida. And this is where the story reaches its most violent and chaotic point. On the night of January 14, 1978, Bundy entered the Chi Omega sorority house near Florida State University. Within the span of 15 minutes, he brutally attacked 4 sleeping women. Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy were killed. 2 others were severely beaten but survived. Bundy then left the house, walked a few blocks, and attacked another student in her apartment.
The pacing of that is terrifying. He went from methodical planning in the Northwest to an absolute frenzy in Florida.
The psychological profile shifted completely. He was no longer using charm or fake injuries to lure victims into his car. This was pure, uncontrolled home invasion. But in that frenzy, he made a critical mistake. On the body of Lisa Levy, he left a deep, distinct bite mark. A month later, he was finally captured in Pensacola, Florida, driving a stolen car. The state of Florida indicted him for the Chi Omega murders, setting the stage for one of the most heavily scrutinized trials in American history.
And this was the first nationally televised trial, right? The entire country was watching him defend himself?
Yes, the Miami trial in 1979 became a media circus. And once again, Bundy insisted on taking control of his own defense. He cross-examined the very police officers who collected evidence against him. He smirked. He played to the cameras. He treated the courtroom like his own personal theater. He tried to project the image of an innocent man being framed by an incompetent state. But the core of the prosecution's case did not rest on his behavior. It rested on forensic science, specifically the bite mark left on Lisa Levy.
But bite mark analysis is incredibly controversial today. Was it considered definitive science back then, or was the defense able to challenge it?
It was heavily challenged, and this became the most critical labyrinth of the trial. Prosecutors brought in Dr. Richard Souveron, a forensic odontologist. Police had obtained a search warrant to take wax impressions and photographs of Bundy's teeth. They physically had to pin him down in the jail to get the molds, because he fought the investigators so hard. In court, Dr. Souveron placed a transparent overlay of Bundy's dental structure directly over a life-size photograph of the bite mark on the victim.
Did the teeth align perfectly with the bruising on the photo?
They aligned in highly specific ways. Bundy had chipped, uneven teeth, which created a unique, ragged pattern. The prosecution argued this was undeniable proof of his identity, but the defense fought back fiercely. They pointed out the inherent flaws in bite mark analysis. They argued that human skin is not a static material like clay or wax. Skin is elastic. It stretches, shrinks, and distorts based on movement and fluid retention. The defense argued that you cannot make a definitive scientific match based on bruising on flexible tissue.
So the jury was being asked to decide whether a bruise on human skin could be treated the same way as a rigid fingerprint. That is a massive legal leap.
It was a massive leap. And modern courts have overturned convictions based solely on bite mark evidence because of exactly those elasticity issues. The science is far less absolute than it was presented in 1979. But at the time, the visual impact in the courtroom was devastating. The jury saw the chipped pattern of the teeth aligning with the terrible wound on the victim. Combined with eyewitness testimony placing him near the sorority house, the prosecution successfully bridged the gap between circumstantial suspicion and physical proof.
So his charm and his legal maneuvering finally ran into physical evidence he could not talk his way out of.
Exactly. On July 24, 1979, the jury deliberated for less than 7 hours. They found Theodore Robert Bundy guilty of the Chi Omega murders. He was subsequently sentenced to death. A later trial for the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach resulted in another death sentence. During that second trial, he even legally married a witness, Carol Ann Boone, while questioning her on the stand, manipulating a Florida law to create another bizarre courtroom spectacle. But the true scope of his crimes remained hidden for another decade. It was only in the days leading up to his execution in 1989 that the charming facade finally collapsed completely.
Did he finally confess because he felt remorse? Or was it just another manipulation tactic to save his own life?
It was a desperate trade for time. He sat down with investigators from Washington, Utah, and Colorado. He offered to detail unsolved murders, hoping the governors would delay his execution in exchange for closure. He admitted to killing 30 young women, though experts estimate the true number is much higher. He described horrific acts of violence, returning to the dumping grounds and keeping mementos. The man who had spent 15 years insisting he was an innocent professional finally admitted the brutal reality of his double life. But the states refused to deal. Time had run out. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair.
He spent his whole life trying to outsmart everyone, and in the end, the confessions did not save him. They just stripped away the myth and confirmed exactly what he was.
His legacy is a haunting reminder that predators do not always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes, they smile at you in broad daylight and ask for help. The systems designed to protect society failed repeatedly because they were looking for a monster, and he looked like a friend. If this case left you questioning the limits of trust and the evolution of forensic science in the courtroom, Subscribe for more careful investigations into cases that changed history.
And tell us in the comments what you think about the courtroom spectacle, or how his escapes were even legally possible, because the failures in the system are just as shocking as the evidence.
If this episode was worth your time, a like helps support the channel and keeps these true crime stories in front of people who value the facts.
Stay safe, and keep questioning everything.